Welcome to Zoe Stories. My teacher's detention turned me into her perfect student. I never thought a simple detention could change my life so dramatically. Sitting in the quiet, fluorescent-lit classroom, waiting for Ms. Carlisle to arrive, I couldn't shake the unease curling in my stomach. My name is Alex, and on the surface, I was just another high school senior. Average grades, average friends, average everything. But beneath that ordinary exterior was a secret I'd never dared share with anyone. I loved dressing like a girl. Not for attention, not for fun at parties, but for me. It made me feel alive. Vulnerable, maybe, but alive. I had always been cautious. Only at home, in the privacy of my room, would I allow myself to step into this other side of me. I had a collection of dresses, skirts, tights, and shoes hidden in the back of my closet, carefully folded, out of reach of curious eyes. Makeup sat neatly on my desk, foundations, eyeshadows, lip glosses, all waiting for the rare moments I could immerse myself in femininity. It wasn't a hobby I shared. It wasn't even a fantasy I let touch reality, except when I was alone. And yet there was Lana, my girlfriend. She didn't know about this part of me, not yet, but she was the closest thing I had to someone who could truly understand. Lana was confident, daring, a whirlwind of energy that drew people in. She laughed too loudly, loved too fiercely, and didn't care what anyone thought. That's why I adored her. But with someone like her, the stakes were higher. If she ever discovered my secret, would she be amused? Supportive? Or would I risk losing her completely? That fear had kept me restrained, cautious, and secretive until that fateful detention. Ms. Carlisle, our strictest teacher, had caught me texting during a lecture. I knew the rules and I knew the punishment: detention after school. I thought it would be boring, a dull hour of staring at the clock and doing busy work. But as soon as I stepped into the empty classroom, the air felt charged with something different, something tense. The walls were lined with polished wood, and the smell of chalk dust and old textbooks lingered. I sat at my assigned seat, legs bouncing nervously, hands fidgeting, waiting. When Ms. Carlisle finally entered, her presence was commanding, almost magnetic. She wore a tailored blouse and skirt that seemed designed to emphasize her authority and her beauty. Her dark hair was pinned back neatly, her eyes sharp yet somehow indulgent, like she knew things about me I didn't even realize myself. "Alex," she said, her voice smooth but firm, "you know why you're here?" "Yes, Miss Carlisle," I muttered, trying to sound respectful but feeling my pulse racing. She didn't scold me further. Instead, she closed the door, leaned against her desk, and regarded me silently for a long moment. There was something in her gaze, an intensity that made me shift in my seat. I had been caught in her attention before, sure, but this felt different. Personal. Focused. "You have potential, Alex," she said finally, and I blinked, caught off guard. Potential to be more than ordinary. I didn't know what to say. Compliments from her were rare, and their timing always felt like a test. "I thank you, Miss Carlisle," I murmured, unsure of what she meant. She walked slowly toward me, heels clicking on the floor, and placed a folder on my desk. "I think it's time for you to embrace a different side of yourself. Don't be afraid of it." I frowned. What was she talking about? The air felt heavier, almost electric. My mind raced with possibilities and fear. But there was something else too, a thrill I hadn't expected. I couldn't explain it. As she gave me instructions for my detention, I realized the task wasn't just about writing essays or completing worksheets. She wanted me to transform. The words echoed in my mind. Try this. Explore this. Become someone else for a little while. My heart skipped. Was she serious? Was this cross-dressing? Was she really asking me to do this in the empty classroom, under her guidance for this detention? I felt a rush of excitement mingled with nerves. My secret hobby, the one I hid from everyone, including Lana, was suddenly being placed in the open, with a teacher whose approval carried weight I hadn't anticipated. I wanted to say no. I wanted to retreat into my comfort zone. But something in Ms. Carlisle's eyes held me in place. Her confidence, her authority, her knowing smile, it was intoxicating. The first step, she said, was simple. Choose your outfit. Make yourself presentable. I'll guide you. I stared at the small wardrobe she had set up in the corner, a surprisingly modest collection of skirts, blouses, tights, and shoes. My hands trembled as I approached, feeling the textures under my fingertips. Soft fabrics, delicate lace, smooth satin. Everything I had only touched in secret, now right in front of me, waiting. I picked a simple yet elegant dress, the kind I had imagined wearing 100 times in the privacy of my room. The moment I slipped it on, a strange mixture of vulnerability and exhilaration washed over me. Standing in front of the mirror, I saw her instructions reflected in my own hesitant eyes. Light makeup, gentle touches to enhance features I had long tried to hide. Suddenly, I looked different. Beautiful. Exposed. Empowered. I felt a blush creep across my cheeks. This was me, but amplified. This was the part of myself I had kept hidden for so long, finally being acknowledged. Ms. Carlyle circled behind me, adjusting a hem here, a collar there, offering critiques with precision. Confidence, Alex. That's what makes you perfect, she murmured. Her words sent a shiver down my spine. Perfect. The word echoed in my mind. Could I really become her vision of the perfect student? Could I embrace this part of me, fully and without shame? By the time the detention hour ended, I wasn't the same Alex who had walked in. Something fundamental had shifted inside me. There was fear, yes, but also a thrill I couldn't deny. A secret, a transformation, a step into an unknown world. And it all began because of a simple detention. Little did I know, this was only the beginning. The real suspense, the real transformation, and the challenges of balancing my secret with my life, and with Lana, were just about to unfold. The afternoon sun streamed weakly through the classroom windows, painting golden stripes on the polished floor. I shifted in my seat, the scratchy fabric of my uniform chafing my skin in a way I hadn't noticed before. Detention was supposed to be boring, a tedious hour of writing lines or filling worksheets, but today it felt different. The quiet hum of the air conditioner and the faint smell of chalk dust did little to calm the storm of nerves twisting inside me. I'm Alex, 17, average in every way that matters: grades, friends, social standing. But I carry a secret, something delicate, something I've only ever allowed myself in the privacy of my room. A part of me that yearns to be seen, yet I've never let anyone glimpse it. I like dressing like a girl. Not as a joke, not for attention, but because it makes me feel whole. Vulnerable, yes, but alive in ways the ordinary world never allows. My collection is hidden at home. Skirts, dresses, tights, shoes, makeup neatly tucked away where no one can stumble across it. I only dress in solitude, under the dim glow of my desk lamp, alone in the world that would never understand. And then there's Lana, my girlfriend. Brilliant, fierce, and endlessly observant. She's the only person whose opinion matters most to me. She doesn't know about my secret. She must never know, or so I thought. The classroom door opened quietly, and Ms. Carlyle stepped in. She's the kind of teacher everyone notices, the kind who commands attention without raising her voice. Today, her sharp eyes landed on me, and I felt immediately small, exposed. Alex, she said softly, but there was an edge to her tone, a quiet expectation that made my stomach tighten. Yes, Miss Carlyle, I muttered, my voice sounding too loud in the still room. She didn't scold me for being late or for my little classroom misstep. Instead, she crossed the room with a purpose, placing a folder on my desk. I want you to try something different today, she said, her gaze steady, unwavering. Something I think you've been holding back from yourself. I frowned, my pulse quickening. Holding back. My mind raced. Did she mean my secret? Was it possible she knew? But how could she? No one had ever come close. Not my friends, not my parents, not even Lana. And yet, there was a tension in the air, a magnetic pull, that made my palms sweat. Sit, she commanded softly. Take a look at what I've prepared. I glanced toward the corner of the room and noticed a small wardrobe I hadn't seen before. It was neat and professional, containing skirts, blouses, tights, and even shoes, each item carefully arranged. My heart skipped. That wardrobe wasn't for normal schoolwork. You will dress, she continued. Not for anyone else, Alex. For yourself. To see what you're capable of when you embrace who you truly are. A thrill surged through me, mixed with panic. My mind raced. Could I do this here, under the watchful eye of Ms. Carlyle? The idea of being exposed, of someone seeing my hidden self, sent shivers down my spine. Yet beneath the fear was an undeniable excitement, a pulse-quickening, almost addictive allure that made my fingers itch to reach for the clothing. Tentatively, I approached the wardrobe. My fingers brushed against soft fabrics, silk, satin, delicate lace. Each touch made my heart race, a strange combination of exhilaration and shame. I pulled out a modest dress, simple but elegant, imagining the sensation of it brushing against my skin. My hands trembled as I lifted it, feeling the reality of my secret world come alive. Take your time, Ms. Carlyle said, voice calm but sharp. Focus on the details. Confidence begins with care. I nodded, and for the first time, I felt her guidance as something more than instruction. It was understanding. She knew I was stepping into unfamiliar territory, and she didn't rush me. Slowly, I changed into the dress, my movements awkward at first. The fabric felt alien against my skin, yet familiar in a way that made my chest tighten. Then came the mirror. My reflection stared back, a mixture of nervousness, curiosity, and desire in my own eyes. The reflection wasn't just Alex anymore. It was Alex, heightened, elevated, stepping into a persona I had only ever dared imagine. My cheeks flushed, my hands fidgeted, and yet I couldn't tear my eyes away. Ms. Carlyle circled behind me, adjusting the hem, smoothing a wrinkle, gently lifting a strand of hair. Her touch was clinical, yet strangely intimate, each gesture sending shivers down my spine. Confidence, Alex. That's the essence of who you are, she murmured. Not what others see, but how you carry yourself. Her words sank in, wrapping around me like a lifeline. I was learning that this wasn't just about clothes or makeup. It was about presence, about control, about embracing a part of myself I had hidden for so long. By the end of the session, I wasn't just nervous. I was exhilarated. My reflections smiled back at me, transformed not just by fabric and cosmetics, but by courage, by vulnerability, and by the thrill of stepping into a secret world where I could be fully me. When I left the classroom, my heels clicking against the floor, I felt different. Alive. Exposed, yes, but empowered. The first step had been taken, and there was no turning back. I had crossed a line, entered a world of suspense, secrecy, and discovery that would challenge every fear I had. And I knew, deep down, that Lana's presence, or anyone else's, would only amplify the stakes from this moment forward. The following detention felt even heavier than the first. The moment I stepped into the classroom, my heart began its relentless pounding. The air seemed charged, thick with anticipation, as if the room itself knew what was about to happen. Ms. Carlyle didn't waste a moment. Without preamble, she gestured toward the wardrobe in the corner, now arranged with even more care, skirts, blouses, tights, and shoes in a way that suggested intention, precision, and control. Alex, she said, her voice low but commanding. Today you'll go further. Not just clothing, but your presence. Your posture, your expressions, your confidence. My stomach tightened. Presence? Confidence? Those words felt alien, when paired with the secret part of me I had only ever dared explore in solitude. The thrill of fear coursed through me, tingling in my fingers, in my legs, in the rapid beat of my heart. Every step I took toward the wardrobe was deliberate, cautious, and yet electric. I selected a soft pastel dress, one that hugged my frame lightly but allowed freedom of movement. The sensation of fabric against my skin made me shiver. For a fleeting moment, I hesitated, a familiar fear gnawing at the edges of my excitement. What if someone saw me? What if I looked ridiculous? What if Lana, if anyone ever knew? Ms. Carlyle approached, her heels clicking softly against the floor. She observed me carefully as I lifted the hem, adjusted the neckline, and smoothed the fabric. Her gaze was sharp, analytical, yet strangely comforting. "Posture, Alex," she said. "Confidence starts in your stance. Shoulders back, chin up, spine straight. You can't be perfect without presence." I mimicked her instructions, adjusting my posture, awkwardly at first. Each correction she offered made me acutely aware of my own body, the curve of my waist, the slope of my shoulders, the length of my legs accentuated by the modest heels she had chosen. Every detail was magnified, and my mind buzzed with a cocktail of fear and exhilaration. Then came makeup. My hands trembled slightly as I picked up a light foundation. This part of the transformation was the most intimate. Each brush stroke, each careful sweep of color, was a reminder of the vulnerability I was embracing. Ms. Carlyle guided my movements subtly, adjusting a blush here, smoothing a line of eyeliner there. Her touch was precise, deliberate, and carried an unspoken encouragement. "You're doing well," she murmured. "Not for me, Alex. For yourself. Let the person in the mirror see who you really are." I swallowed hard. Who I really was. That was the question that had haunted me for years. This transformation was more than fabric or makeup. It was an exploration of identity, a confrontation with a part of myself I had long hidden. My reflection began to shift before my eyes. I didn't just see Alex. I saw potential, elegance, a version of me unafraid, exposed, and undeniably captivating. But fear was never far behind. My mind kept flashing forward. What if Lana walked in now? What if someone else discovered this secret world I had carved for myself? Every noise outside the classroom, every creak of the floorboards, made my heart jump. The thrill of secrecy was addictive, and the stakes had never felt higher. Ms. Carlyle handed me a delicate necklace, her eyes locked on mine. "Details matter, Alex. Accessories complete the transformation. They anchor confidence." I hesitated, fingers brushing the cool metal, before placing it around my neck. Something shifted internally. The necklace, the dress, the subtle makeup, they were no longer just objects. They were symbols of a part of me finally emerging. I could feel my nervousness mingling with a raw excitement that made my pulse quicken. "You're ready," Ms. Carlyle said finally, stepping back. "Now move, speak, act like the person in the mirror. Confidence is contagious. Embrace it." I did. My first steps across the classroom were tentative, each heel click echoing in the quiet room. But gradually, my gait grew more assured. I caught my reflection in the mirror, my hair falling perfectly, my posture strong, my face composed, and I realized I was enjoying the sensation of being noticed, even if only by my own reflection. A sudden noise made me jump. A book dropped in the corner of the room, far enough away not to reveal me, yet close enough to jolt my nerves. Ms. Carlyle's eyes met mine. "Stay in character," she instructed. Her calmness anchored me. The fear, the suspense, the adrenaline, it was all part of the process. As the detention drew on, the internal battle intensified. I loved the transformation, the thrill, the vulnerability, and yet, part of me still recoiled at the thought of being discovered. My mind drifted to Lana, imagining her walking in unexpectedly. Would she accept this? Would she be shocked? Or would she see the same version of me that Ms. Carlyle now insisted was real and valid? The final moments of the session were electric. Ms. Carlyle directed me to adjust my posture, check my reflection, and walk the classroom confidently. I did so, my heart racing, feeling a mixture of fear and liberation unlike anything I had ever experienced. For a brief, suspended moment, I realized the truth. This wasn't just a fantasy or secret hobby. It was becoming a part of me, a thrilling, terrifying, intoxicating part. When I left the classroom that day, I felt a rush of both fear and exhilaration. The city outside the school felt different. Each glance from a passerby seemed laden with potential discovery. Every step in my own shoes, now ordinary, yet somehow confining, reminded me that this double life, this tension between secrecy and expression, was only beginning. The thrill had hooked me, but so had the suspense. Each detention, each session with Miss Carlyle, would push me further. And I knew, deep down, the balance between exhilaration and exposure would define everything from now on. The days following that second detention felt surreal, as if the world had shifted slightly on its axis. Every glance in the mirror, every brush of my fingers against a soft fabric, made me acutely aware of the dual life I was living. I was still Alex, the quiet, cautious student who navigated hallways and classrooms with minimal attention. But now, there was another version of me, bold, delicate, feminine, emerging in flashes, waiting for the moment I could embrace her again. Internal conflict became a constant companion. I found myself thinking about Lana in moments I shouldn't, about how she might react if she ever discovered this hidden world. The fear of judgment, of losing her, gnawed at me like a persistent ache. Yet beneath that fear, a spark of excitement flared. I had tasted freedom, and it was intoxicating. It wasn't just about the clothes or the makeup, it was about agency, about embodying a side of myself that had been suppressed for too long. Ms. Carlyle's detentions were no longer just sessions, they were challenges. Each time I entered the classroom, I felt the weight of expectation pressing down on me. She guided me through intricate details, how to tilt my head slightly to soften my gaze, how to walk with measured grace, how to subtly accentuate my movements so that confidence radiated naturally. It wasn't enough to look transformed. I had to be transformed fully, in every gesture. One afternoon, she introduced a new test. "Alex," she said, her voice low and deliberate, "today you will speak as your persona. You will introduce yourself, narrate a moment, and maintain your presence." My stomach nodded. Speaking? My voice trembled as I tried to imagine using it in this new form. What if I faltered? What if I revealed the tension, the fear, the awkwardness? But she was patient, guiding me with gentle corrections, coaching me to project confidence even when I felt exposed. The transformation went beyond appearance. My emotions were shifting in ways I hadn't anticipated. I felt pride at the reflection I saw, exhilaration at the sound of my own heels clicking across the floor, and a creeping anxiety that someone would discover me in this vulnerable state. The thrill of secrecy had a sharp edge, like balancing on the tip of a knife. I started experimenting more boldly. Skirts with patterns, brighter blouses, and delicate accessories. Each choice made my reflection feel more alive, more expressive. My movements became fluid, a dance between fear and liberation. I noticed how my own body responded, the slight sway of my hips, the tilt of my shoulders, the confidence in each step. And yet, with each step forward, the suspense grew. Every creak outside the classroom, every distant voice sent my heart racing. Even at home, my mind was consumed. I replayed each session in vivid detail, imagining different scenarios of exposure. I thought about Lana, walking in unexpectedly, and how her gaze might shift from confusion to curiosity, or even admiration. I thought about my parents and friends, imagining the mix of shock and acceptance, or worse, rejection. Ms. Carlyle sensed my hesitation. "Fear is natural, Alex," she said one day, adjusting my necklace. "But fear is different from hesitation. You must learn to let it fuel you, not freeze you." Her words resonated deeply. I realized that the suspense, the potential for discovery, was part of what made the transformation feel real. It wasn't just about wearing a dress or applying makeup. It was about navigating the precarious line between who I was publicly and who I was privately. By the end of that detention, I had started to embrace the tension as part of the process. Each near discovery, each fleeting moment of fear, intensified the thrill. I began to understand that cross-dressing wasn't just a hobby or secret indulgence. It was a conduit for courage, for self-expression, for confronting the anxieties I had spent years suppressing. But the suspense was relentless. One afternoon, I was adjusting my blouse in the mirror when I heard a faint knock at the door. My heart froze. Ms. Carlyle's eyes narrowed, a subtle warning flickering in her gaze. "Stay calm," she whispered. "You can handle this." I nodded, but the adrenaline surged. The knock could have been anyone: Lana, a friend, a janitor. But each scenario carried its own stakes. My hands shook slightly as I smoothed my hair, adjusted my skirt, and forced a calm posture. The knock persisted, a reminder that the world outside this controlled transformation could intrude at any moment. That night, alone in my room, I reflected on the growing intensity of these sessions. I realized that my internal conflict was no longer just about fear, it was about desire. I wanted to continue, even as the stakes rose. I wanted to explore the boundaries of this dual life, to see how far I could push the tension between secrecy and revelation, fear and exhilaration. The suspense, I understood, was addictive. Every session with Ms. Carlyle tested my courage, my composure, my identity. Every near discovery heightened the thrill. And every reflection in the mirror, every adjustment of clothing or makeup, reminded me that I was walking a delicate tightrope between two selves. By the time I returned home that evening, my mind was racing. I rehearsed interactions, imagined potential discoveries, and considered the consequences of each choice. The duality of my life had become both a source of exhilaration and anxiety, a suspenseful dance I couldn't resist. I knew, with a mixture of fear and anticipation, that the next detention would push me further than ever before. And deep down, I couldn't wait. Detention that afternoon felt different. I wasn't just entering a classroom. I was stepping into a stage where every movement, every glance, every choice mattered. The wardrobe in the corner seemed almost alive, holding a promise of transformation and danger in equal measure. The anticipation alone made my hands sweat. Ms. Carlyle observed me silently as I approached. "Today," she said, her voice calm but commanding, "you will explore complexity. Layers, accessories, subtleties in posture, nuance in expression. This is where mastery begins." I swallowed hard. Complexity? My mind whirled with possibilities. The dresses in the wardrobe were more intricate than before. Pleats, lace trims, subtle embroidery, and layers that could either elevate or overwhelm me. The heels were higher, the stockings finer. Each accessory, earrings, bracelets, necklaces, felt like a small challenge, a test of my composure and coordination. I began with a soft, knee-length dress, navy with delicate embroidery at the hem. I paired it with sheer tights and modest heels. My hands trembled slightly as I fastened the straps of the shoes. The sensation of the heels pressing against my feet was thrilling and terrifying at once. With each step toward the mirror, the reality of my transformation became more tangible. Ms. Carlyle circled me, adjusting a hem here, smoothing a crease there. Her attention to detail was meticulous. "Posture, Alex," she reminded me. A subtle tilt of the head, a gentle sway of the hips, these small movements define presence. I mimicked her guidance, cautiously at first, then more fluidly as I felt my confidence grow. The mirror reflected not just my appearance, but the persona I was stepping into, delicate, poised, undeniably feminine. My heartbeat quickened, and a thrill of power mingled with vulnerability surged through me. Then came the accessories. Earrings, a bracelet, a delicate necklace. Each addition felt like a symbolic step further into this alternate self. I adjusted the necklace around my neck, feeling the weight and coolness of the metal. I caught my reflection and paused. Every detail was perfect, yet each step deeper into this identity heightened the suspense. What if someone walked in? What if Lana somehow discovered this world? A sudden noise, a chair scraping in the hallway, made my stomach flip. My heart raced and I froze. Ms. Carlyle's hand rested lightly on my shoulder. "Breathe, Alex. Fear is part of the process. Use it." I exhaled slowly, regaining composure. She was right. The suspense, the potential for exposure, only sharpened the experience. My reflections seemed to watch me, a silent observer of my growing confidence and lingering anxiety. As I practiced walking across the classroom, balancing the heels and maintaining posture, I felt a mix of exhilaration and dread. Each step was a test of control, each movement a rehearsal in confidence. The thrill of transformation was addictive, yet the stakes were higher than ever. Ms. Carlyle introduced a subtle twist. "Imagine someone unexpected walking in," she said softly. "How would you carry yourself? How would you respond?" My mind raced. The possibilities were endless and terrifying. I imagined Lana, friends, teachers, all potentially discovering this secret. The thought made my pulse spike, yet it also added a delicious tension to every movement. I was learning not just to appear confident, but to feel confident under pressure. By the end of the session, I had mastered the dress, the shoes, the accessories, and even my expressions. My reflection in the mirror was no longer just Alex. It was Alex reborn, poised, confident, and aware of every subtle detail that defined this new identity. The suspense lingered like a shadow. Every sound outside the classroom, every footstep in the hall, kept me alert. I knew that one misstep could expose me, yet I also realized that the thrill, the blend of fear and empowerment, was what made the transformation so compelling. As I left the classroom, my heels clicking firmly against the floor, I felt a growing sense of self-assurance. The risk, the suspense, and the thrill of near discovery were no longer deterrents. They were essential parts of the experience. I was addicted not just to the transformation itself, but to the tension it created. At home, I replayed every moment in my mind, imagining alternative scenarios and rehearsing responses. I thought about Lana, wondering how she would react, and about the growing pull of this secret life. The tension, the fear, the thrill, they all merged into a single, intoxicating force, pulling me further into this world I could no longer resist. The line between fear and excitement blurred. Each session pushed me closer to the edge, testing my courage, my composure, and my identity. And deep down, I knew that the next step, the point of no return, was approaching. The classroom felt different that afternoon, heavier somehow, as if every wall, every desk, every shadow was aware of the secret I carried. Today's detention wasn't just another session. It was the culmination of everything I had been building toward. Every flicker of confidence, every tremor of fear, every careful gesture had led to this moment. And Miss Carlyle's eyes, sharp and knowing, promised that the challenge would push me further than ever before. "Alex," she said, her voice low and deliberate, "today you will remain in character for the entire session. You will move, speak, and exist as her. Not just for me, but for yourself. And there will be interruptions, simulated, controlled, but real in their effect. You must respond." My stomach dropped. Interruptions? The adrenaline surged immediately. My pulse quickened, my hands became clammy, and my breath caught. The thrill of potential discovery, the suspense, was electric, almost unbearable. And yet I nodded. I had come this far. I couldn't turn back now. I selected a flowing dress, soft lavender, its hem brushing lightly against my knees. The subtle shimmer caught the fluorescent lights of the classroom, giving me an almost ethereal glow. The tights were sheer, the heels higher than ever. Each layer, each accessory, each careful stroke of makeup deepened my immersion in the persona I had been crafting for weeks. Ms. Carlyle guided me through posture, movement, and gestures, her touch light but precise. "Confidence under pressure, Alex," she reminded me. "Every step, every glance, every expression communicates who you are. Never falter." As I walked across the classroom, balancing the heels, the tension in my body was palpable. My reflection in the mirror stared back at me, eyes wide, lips slightly parted, a perfect blend of vulnerability and poise. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through me, heightening every sense, the scratch of tights against skin, the delicate weight of the necklace around my neck, the soft brush of hair against my shoulders. Then came the interruptions. A sudden creak at the door, followed by a soft knock, made my heart jump. Ms. Carlyle's eyes met mine, calm and reassuring. "Remember your composure," she whispered. I froze for a split second, imagining Lana walking in, or a curious friend discovering the secret world I had been building. My pulse raced, but I forced myself to breathe, to move, to act as if nothing were amiss. Each heartbeat echoed in my ears like a warning drum, each sound outside the classroom a reminder of how close I was to exposure. A second knock, this one louder, made me stumble slightly, the heel catching under the desk. My face flushed, and I felt a panic rising from deep within me. But Ms. Carlyle's hand steadied me. Eyes forward. "Confidence," she instructed. "You are in control, Alex." I lifted my chin, squared my shoulders, and continued walking. My reflection showed no tremor, no hesitation, yet internally, the suspense was overwhelming. Every step was a negotiation between fear and exhilaration. Every glance at the mirror reminded me of the power I now wielded over my own transformation, yet also of the fragility of secrecy. As the session continued, the interruptions grew more intense. A chair moved, a faint voice echoed from the hallway, the sound of footsteps approaching. Each moment tested my ability to maintain composure, to stay fully in character, to embody this persona without faltering. And then came the final challenge. Ms. Carlyle instructed me to speak, to narrate a brief story from her perspective, to use gestures, expressions, and tone as if I were fully inhabiting this new identity. My throat tightened, my palms slick, but I began. My voice was soft, controlled, yet confident. Each word felt like a declaration, a claim over this part of myself I had hidden for so long. By the end of the session, I was breathless, exhilarated, and trembling. My reflection, once just a secret self, had become tangible, vivid, undeniable. The suspense, the fear, the near discoveries, they had sharpened every sense, heightened every emotion, and made the transformation complete. As I left the classroom, the hallways seemed to shift around me. Every glance from passing students felt loaded with potential exposure. Every creak of the floorboards reminded me that the world outside the controlled environment of Ms. Carlyle's detentions was unpredictable, dangerous, and thrilling. That night, alone in my room, I stared at my reflection in the mirror, replaying the day in vivid detail. I realized that the suspense, the tension, the fear of discovery, it had become as addictive as the transformation itself. I had crossed a line, stepped fully into a world where vulnerability and empowerment coexisted, where thrill and anxiety intertwined. And I knew, deep down, that the next chapter, the climax, would push me further than I had ever imagined. The stakes would rise, the tension would peak, and the line between secrecy and exposure would blur completely. For now, though, I allowed myself a small, fleeting smile. I had survived. I had grown. And the suspense, the thrill, the intoxicating danger, it was only beginning. The day of the ultimate detention arrived with a weight I could almost feel pressing on my chest. Every heartbeat was sharper, every sound in the classroom amplified. Ms. Carlyle's presence was commanding as always, but today, there was a palpable tension in the air, an unspoken promise that nothing would remain simple. "Alex," she said, her voice calm but edged with authority, "today you will maintain your persona under pressure. There will be interruptions, challenges, and tests of composure. Remember, confidence is your shield." My stomach nodded. I had grown confident over the past sessions, yes, but this was different. The stakes felt higher. Fear and exhilaration mingled, twisting into a knot of anticipation and dread. I knew that one slip could unravel everything. I chose a dress carefully, emerald green, fitted at the waist, flowing gently to my knees. The soft fabric brushed against my legs like a whisper, and the sheer stockings gave a subtle sheen to my skin. Heels clicked against the floor as I approached the mirror, my reflection staring back, poised yet tense. Ms. Carlyle's instructions were meticulous. Every step, every gesture, every glance counts. Maintain presence. Anticipate challenges. Stay in character. The first interruption came almost immediately, a knock at the door, soft but deliberate. My pulse spiked. I froze mid-step, imagining Lana walking in or a friend discovering this hidden persona I had cultivated for weeks. Ms. Carlyle's calm voice guided me. Breathe. Remember who you are right now. Confidence doesn't falter under pressure. I exhaled slowly, forcing my posture to remain perfect. The knock came again, louder this time, echoing across the silent classroom. My hands trembled slightly as I adjusted the hem of the dress and smoothed my hair. Every instinct screamed to hide, yet I forced myself to continue, each step a defiance of fear. Then came the moment of speaking. Ms. Carlyle instructed me to describe a scene from my persona's perspective. My voice was soft, but clear. Every word, every inflection, every subtle gesture reinforced the persona I had grown into. Yet the suspense never left me. Every shadow, every sound outside the door, made me acutely aware of how precarious this performance was. A sudden noise, a cough, perhaps from the hallway, made my heart skip. I stumbled slightly in my heels, my reflection in the mirror flickering with doubt. Ms. Carlyle's hand rested lightly on my shoulder. Eyes forward. Composure. You control this moment, she murmured. I forced myself to continue, the adrenaline coursing through me, sharpening my focus. My reflection was no longer just a person. It was a presence, a confidence built from fear, excitement, and meticulous attention to detail. I felt the duality within me, the nervous, vulnerable Alex and the poised, confident persona, wrestling for dominance. Then the door opened slightly. My heart lurched. A janitor peeked in, unaware of the intensity of what he had interrupted. I froze, every muscle tight, holding my posture, my expression, my identity intact. Ms. Carlyle's whisper cut through the tension. Maintain presence. Breathe. Confidence is your armor. I smiled softly, lifted my chin, and continued speaking, projecting calm and grace, as if the intruder were part of the exercise. The janitor glanced briefly, nodded politely, and left. My legs shook, my breath came fast, yet I had survived the first real test of exposure. Every subsequent moment was electric. Each movement, each step across the classroom, each adjustment of clothing or hair carried a weight I had never experienced before. The suspense was no longer just imagined. It was tangible, a living thing pressing against me, testing my courage and control. By the end of the session, I felt both exhausted and exhilarated. My reflection in the mirror wasn't just Alex. It was a culmination of weeks of transformation, a living testament to the thrill, fear, and artistry of the persona I had nurtured. I had faced interruptions, close calls, and the ever-present threat of exposure, and I had survived. Yet deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The true climax, the moments that would test everything I had learned, everything I had built, was still to come. The line between control and chaos, secrecy and discovery, confidence and vulnerability would be tested like never before. As I left the classroom, my heels clicking on the floor, I felt a shiver run through me. The thrill, the fear, the suspense, they weren't just part of the session anymore. They had become part of me, intertwined with the persona I had worked so hard to cultivate. And I knew that the next challenges, the twists and obstacles, would push me further than I had ever imagined. Underscore 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 underscore. The tension that day was suffocating. Every sound outside the classroom, every shuffle of footsteps, every faint murmur seemed amplified, a reminder of how close I was to exposure. My heels clicked against the floor, deliberate and precise, as I moved toward the wardrobe, each step feeling heavier than the last. The emerald green dress I wore yesterday had been replaced with a soft pink ensemble, delicate, flowing, and impossibly feminine. It was a bold choice, one that demanded attention, and I could feel the persona I had honed over weeks rising to meet the challenge. Ms. Carlyle's gaze was sharp, her presence commanding. "Alex," she said, "today you will maintain composure under direct scrutiny. There will be observers, simulated or real. You will remain perfect." Observers? My pulse spiked. The adrenaline surged through every vein, and my palms became clammy. I imagined Lana walking in, friends, teachers, anyone discovering the secret world I had been cultivating. Each scenario made my stomach twist with both fear and exhilaration. I adjusted the dress, smoothing the fabric over my thighs, the heels giving me a heightened sense of elegance and vulnerability simultaneously. The mirror reflected my image, poised yet tense, a perfect embodiment of the persona I had been nurturing. But the suspense was unrelenting. Every flicker of movement outside the door made me freeze, each sound threatening to shatter the fragile composure I had fought so hard to maintain. Then it happened, a sudden knock at the door, louder and more urgent than before. My heart lurched violently. I froze, unsure if I should move or stay rooted. Ms. Carlyle's voice was calm, yet firm. "Maintain presence. Confidence is key." I took a deep breath and slowly approached the door, trying to exude poise despite the adrenaline coursing through me. The door opened just slightly, and to my shock, it was Lana. My chest tightened, a mixture of panic and anticipation flooding me. Her eyes widened slightly, a flicker of confusion crossing her face as she took in the sight of me, dressed, made up, poised, yet undeniably vulnerable. "Alex," she whispered, her voice a mix of curiosity and disbelief. Every instinct screamed at me to retreat, to explain, to revert to the familiar safety of my usual self. But the persona I had embraced over weeks wouldn't allow it. I forced a smile, lifted my chin, and spoke softly but confidently.
"Hi, Lana. I
wanted to show you something." Her gaze softened slightly, but there was still an undercurrent of tension, a question unspoken. She stepped further into the classroom, and the suspense became tangible, pressing against every nerve in my body. The thrill of revelation mingled with fear, creating a heady cocktail of emotion I had never experienced before. Ms. Carlyle observed silently, her eyes encouraging but neutral. This was my moment, the ultimate test of composure, confidence, and authenticity. Every movement, every word, every subtle gesture carried immense weight. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my legs trembling slightly, yet I maintained posture, poise, and the persona I had crafted so meticulously. Lana's eyes scanned the room, taking in the clothes, the accessories, the careful details of makeup and posture. "You've changed," she finally said, her voice soft, uncertain. The tension in her tone matched my own, a mixture of surprise, awe, and apprehension. "Yes," I admitted, my voice steady. "It's something I've been exploring, something I needed to understand about myself." The moment hung in the air, suspended between revelation and reaction. Every second stretched, each heartbeat echoing in my ears as Lana's expression shifted from shock to something softer, more accepting. Yet the suspense remained. Would she fully understand? Would she accept this side of me? Then, as if to intensify the tension, a sudden creak from the hallway reminded me that exposure could come from anywhere. My body tensed instantly, but I kept my gaze on Lana, maintaining the persona, the poise, the confidence that Ms. Carlyle had drilled into me over countless sessions. The minutes stretched endlessly. Lana moved closer, her curiosity piqued, but her expression still guarded. I realized that the suspense, the fear of discovery, the thrill of revealing my secret, the uncertainty of acceptance, was now intertwined with our relationship in a way I had never imagined. By the end of that session, I was both exhausted and exhilarated. The near exposure, the confrontation with Lana, and the constant threat of discovery had pushed me to my limits. Yet I had maintained composure, embodied my persona fully, and faced the suspense head-on. As I left the classroom, my heels clicking softly against the floor, I realized that the climax of suspense was not just about external threats. It was about confronting fear, embracing vulnerability, and asserting control over a part of myself I had long hidden. The journey was far from over, and the ultimate challenges, the twists, obstacles, and emotional peaks, were still ahead. But for the first time, I understood the power of transformation, the intoxicating thrill of suspense, and the delicate balance between fear and exhilaration. The days after Lana's unexpected visit were a whirlwind in my mind. Her presence had intensified every fear, every thrill, and every sense of vulnerability I had experienced. I couldn't stop replaying her expression, the curiosity, the slight confusion, and the hint of acceptance that lingered in her eyes. The suspense hadn't ended. It had only grown sharper. That afternoon, I returned to detention with Miss Carlyle, my nerves fraying but my determination stronger than ever. Today's challenge was unprecedented. "Alex," she began, her voice deliberate, "today you will face multiple interruptions while maintaining complete composure. Your reactions, your movements, and your expressions will be tested under pressure. There will be surprises." Surprises. My stomach churned. The thought of exposure, of failing, of revealing everything unintentionally, made my pulse hammer in my chest. Yet beneath the fear was a thrill I couldn't deny, a mixture of liberation and suspense, driving me forward. I chose a striking ensemble, a fitted, pastel blue dress that accentuated my figure, paired with sheer stockings and heels that clicked sharply with each step. Accessories were delicate but prominent, earrings, bracelets, and a necklace that gleamed softly under the classroom lights. Each detail amplified the persona I had been crafting for weeks. My reflection in the mirror seemed almost alive, poised, confident, yet tinged with the vulnerability that only suspense could create. Ms. Carlyle guided me through posture, movement, and gestures. "Remember, Alex," she said, her voice soft but firm, "every step, every glance, every breath communicates who you are. Suspense isn't just outside, it's inside you. Harness it." The first interruption came suddenly, a loud knock on the door, echoing through the otherwise silent classroom. My heart leapt into my throat. I froze mid-step, the heels threatening to wobble beneath me. Ms. Carlyle's hand on my shoulder steadied me. "Confidence. Presence. Control," she whispered. The door opened and, to my shock, it wasn't just a casual visitor. It was one of the school administrators, someone whose presence meant authority, judgment, and scrutiny. My pulse raced violently. My mind screamed to retreat, to explain, to abandon the persona. But I held my ground, forcing a soft smile, lifting my chin, and projecting poise. The administrator scanned the room briefly, eyes flicking over my attire and posture. Every second stretched, each heartbeat amplified in my ears. I could feel the sweat prickling on my skin, my palms slick inside the dress. Yet I maintained composure, moving with deliberate elegance, every gesture a testament to the persona I had worked so hard to embody. Once the administrator left, the next challenge intensified. Ms. Carlyle instructed me to narrate a scenario aloud, incorporating gestures, facial expressions, and fluid movement. My voice trembled initially, but I forced control, each word resonating with confidence. The suspense wasn't just external anymore. It had become internal, a pulse of adrenaline and anticipation that coursed through every nerve. Then came the near discovery that tested me like never before. A sudden noise, a locker slamming in the hall, made me freeze mid-gesture. My heels caught slightly on the floor, a minor misstep that could have given everything away. Ms. Carlyle's voice cut through the tension. "Recover.
Now."
Use the moment." I adjusted my posture, smoothed my hair, and continued speaking, projecting calm as if nothing had happened. My heart raced, but the thrill, the suspense, was intoxicating. I was balancing on a knife edge between exposure and mastery, vulnerability and confidence. Every detail mattered, and I could feel the persona I had nurtured responding instinctively, guiding me through the moment. By the end of the session, I was trembling, exhilarated, and utterly drained. The suspense, the near discoveries, and the intense scrutiny had pushed me beyond anything I had experienced before. My reflection in the mirror was not just Alex or the persona. It was a fusion, a living testament to the weeks of transformation, fear, and thrill. Walking home that evening, each step in my heels echoed in the empty streets like a heartbeat of its own. The suspense lingered, a tangible force pressing against me. Every shadow, every passing glance from strangers, reminded me of the delicate balance I now lived with daily. That night, I replayed every detail in my mind. The interruptions, the near discoveries, the moments of exhilaration, they had heightened every sense, every emotion, and every aspect of my transformation. I realized that suspense was no longer just an external element. It was embedded within me, intertwined with my identity and my journey. And as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I knew the final moments, the ultimate tests of exposure, emotion, and transformation, were still ahead. The climax wasn't over. The tension, the suspense, the duality of fear and exhilaration would push me further than I had ever imagined. The classroom seemed to close in around me that day, shadows stretching unnaturally, every sound magnified into a warning. I felt the weight of suspense pressing against my chest, each heartbeat louder than the last. Today's detention was not just another exercise. It was the ultimate test of control, composure, and the duality I had embraced over weeks of transformation. Ms. Carlyle's voice cut through the tension. "Alex," she said, her tone calm but unwavering, "you will face multiple interruptions, surprises, and direct scrutiny. Your composure will be tested to its limit. Remember, the persona is inseparable from confidence." I swallowed hard. My palms were slick, my legs trembling slightly in the heels. The dress I had chosen was bold, a deep crimson, fitted at the waist, flowing just above the knees. The fabric shimmered subtly under the fluorescent lights, accentuating every movement. Accessories were delicate but pronounced: earrings, bracelets, and a necklace that caught light with every turn of my head. Every detail demanded attention and precision. The first interruption came quickly, a sudden knock on the door, urgent and deliberate. My heart leapt. I froze mid-step, instinctively clutching the fabric of the dress. Ms. Carlyle's hand rested lightly on my shoulder. "Confidence. Presence. Control," she whispered. I forced myself to exhale, straighten my shoulders, and continue as if nothing had happened. The door opened slowly, and I nearly froze in panic. But it wasn't just anyone. It was the principal, a figure of authority whose presence meant scrutiny and judgment. My pulse raced violently. Exposure, embarrassment, and fear surged all at once. I smiled softly, lifted my chin, and maintained the persona, every movement deliberate, every gesture confident. The principal's eyes flicked over me, scanning the ensemble, the posture, the subtle nuances of expression. Each second stretched endlessly. My reflection in the mirror was poised, perfect, but inside, my heart hammered like a drum. The principal lingered briefly, nodded, and left, leaving me trembling but victorious. Ms. Carlyle's eyes met mine, approving yet unyielding. "Excellent. Now, the real test begins." The next challenge was verbal, a narration with improvisation under scrutiny. I had to describe a scenario from my persona's perspective while responding to imaginary interruptions. My voice was soft but clear, every word carefully modulated. The suspense was electric. Every imagined intrusion heightened the thrill and anxiety. Suddenly, a shadow fell across the doorframe. A student had peeked in, curiosity evident in their eyes. My heart lurched violently. Every instinct screamed to retreat, to break character, to hide. But I stood firm, maintaining composure, posture, and expression. My pulse raced, palms clammy, yet I projected confidence. Ms. Carlyle guided me silently, her presence a stabilizing force. "Use the suspense. Let it sharpen your focus. Control it. Don't let it control you." I adjusted my stance, lifted my chin, and continued speaking, weaving the narrative fluidly despite the tension. The near discoveries, the interruptions, and the fear of exposure had sharpened every sense, heightening the thrill of transformation. I was no longer just Alex or the persona. I was both, a fusion of fear, excitement, and meticulous poise. By the end of the session, I was trembling with exhaustion and exhilaration. The suspense, near exposures, and challenges had pushed me to the brink, yet I had survived, maintained control, and embodied the persona fully. My reflection in the mirror was a testament to transformation, courage, and the intoxicating thrill of suspense. Walking home, each click of my heels echoed in empty hallways like a heartbeat of triumph. The thrill of risk, exposure, and near discovery lingered, a tangible force pressing against me. Every shadow, every passing glance, reminded me of the delicate balance I now lived with daily, the coexistence of fear and empowerment, secrecy and revelation. That night, alone in my room, I stared at the mirror and reflected on the journey. The suspense had become a part of me, inseparable from the persona I had nurtured. Every heartbeat, every near exposure, every moment of exhilaration had forged a stronger, bolder identity. I knew the final part of the climax awaited, the ultimate moment where every tension, every risk, and every emotion would converge. The suspense would peak, secrets teeter on the edge of revelation, and my identity would face its greatest test yet. The classroom felt smaller than ever, every corner, every shadow conspiring to heighten the suspense. Today's detention was the culmination of everything: the weeks of practice, the transformations, the near discoveries, the tension that had become almost addictive. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through me, sharpening every sense. Ms. Carlyle's eyes were steady, commanding. "Alex," she said, "today you will face the ultimate challenge. Every interruption, every surprise, every risk will test your composure, your persona, and your courage. Remember, perfection is not the goal. It is the control of suspense, the mastery of fear." My stomach twisted, my palms slick. The dress I had chosen was striking, a soft ivory, fitted with delicate lace, flowing just above my knees. Heels clicked against the floor with precision, adding a rhythm to the tension that made my heart race. Accessories were minimal but impactful: a single bracelet, small earrings, and a necklace that shimmered with every movement. Each detail was essential. Every element could betray or enhance the persona I had worked so hard to perfect. The first interruption came immediately, a loud knock at the door, sharp enough to make me jump. My heart leapt, adrenaline flooding my system. Ms. Carlyle's calm voice cut through the panic. "Control it. Presence. Confidence." I squared my shoulders, lifted my chin, and approached the door, projecting composure. The door opened, revealing Lana. My chest tightened, a flood of emotions, fear, anticipation, excitement, rushed through me. Her eyes widened slightly, a mix of disbelief and curiosity. "Alex," she whispered, her voice soft but layered with emotion. I forced a gentle smile, keeping my posture impeccable, my voice steady. "Hi, Lana. I wanted to show you this side of me." Her gaze swept over the ensemble, the posture, the subtle nuances of expression. For a moment, time seemed suspended. Every heartbeat, every breath, every flicker of emotion felt magnified. The suspense was unbearable yet exhilarating, a thrill unlike anything I had ever experienced. Suddenly, a shadow fell across the hallway outside, a janitor, moving unpredictably. My pulse spiked. Every instinct screamed to retreat, to hide, to abandon the persona. But I held firm, lifting my chin and maintaining poise, as if the interruption were part of the performance. Ms. Carlyle's guiding hand on my shoulder reminded me, "Use the suspense. Let it strengthen you." Lana stepped closer, her curiosity piqued, yet her expression remained guarded. "You've really done all this?" she asked softly, her tone a mixture of awe and concern. "Yes," I admitted, my voice calm but firm. It's something I've needed to explore, to understand about myself. The suspense escalated further when a sudden loud noise, a locker slamming, footsteps rushing, made me freeze. The heels threatened to slip beneath me, and I had to adjust instantly. Every second stretched endlessly. Every movement, every gesture, every breath was a test of control, of poise, of mastery over fear. By the end of the session, I was trembling, exhausted yet exhilarated. The suspense, the interruptions, the near discoveries, and the constant risk of exposure had pushed me beyond anything I had imagined. My reflection in the mirror was a testament to weeks of transformation, courage, and the intoxicating thrill of suspense. As I walked home, each click of my heels echoed like a heartbeat, a reminder of the duality I now carried, the coexistence of fear and empowerment, secrecy and revelation. I realized the suspense was no longer just external. It had become part of me, shaping my identity, guiding my persona, and defining the thrill of transformation. That night, alone in my room, I stared into the mirror, replaying every detail. The near exposures, the interruptions, Lana's unexpected presence, all of it merged into a single, electrifying experience. The suspense had forged something new, a confidence tempered by fear, a thrill entwined with vulnerability, and a persona that was no longer just a disguise, but a part of me. And as I lay down, the heels still echoing in my mind, the final twist lingered, unseen, unresolved, a cliffhanger that promised the next stage of challenge, the next revelation, and the next test of control. The story was far from over. The classroom was quiet now, the intensity of the day lingering like a charged current in the air. I sank into the chair, my legs trembling from the heels and the adrenaline that refused to leave my system. Every sound, each distant footstep, the rustle of papers, the hum of the fluorescent lights, seemed amplified, reminding me that the suspense had not yet released its grip. Miss Carlyle stood nearby, arms crossed, her expression calm but unreadable. "Alex," she said softly, "you've done well today. But remember, the world outside this room is unpredictable. Your control, your composure, your persona, they will be tested beyond these walls." I nodded, swallowing hard, my mind racing. The near discoveries, the interruptions, the constant risk of exposure, it all felt like it had brought me to a precipice. And standing on that edge, I realized something profound. The transformation was more than physical. It was emotional, psychological. I wasn't just Alex anymore, hiding behind a secret. I was someone entirely new, someone who had embraced vulnerability, thrill, and identity in equal measure. Lana's presence that day lingered in my thoughts. Her eyes, wide with curiosity, her voice layered with awe and concern, haunted me in the best way possible. Did she understand? Did she accept? Or was this a temporary fascination that would fade when the novelty wore off? The suspense of her reaction, the uncertainty of how my revelation would impact our relationship, pressed against me like a weight I couldn't shake. As I stood, brushing imaginary lint from the dress and smoothing the fabric, a sudden knock at the door froze me in place. My pulse jumped. The sound was deliberate, yet I couldn't immediately place who it might be. Miss Carlyle's gaze met mine, calm but charged with expectation. "Remember, Alex," she whispered, "the final challenge is exposure. Your composure will define the outcome." I took a slow breath, trying to steady my racing heart. The suspense was unbearable. The door creaked open slowly, and my mind spun with possibilities. It wasn't just the fear of being caught. It was the thrill of the unknown, the uncertainty that had defined every step of this journey. And then a shadow fell across the doorway. I squinted, the fluorescent lights casting long, eerie shapes. My reflection in the mirror, the poised persona I had cultivated, stared back at me with wide, unblinking eyes. The reality of duality, the Alex I had always been, and the persona I had fully embraced, felt almost tangible, vibrating in the charged silence. The shadow shifted. A familiar silhouette, but the face unclear. My breath caught. Every instinct screamed to retreat, to hide, to revert to the safety of the old identity. Yet my legs remained planted, my posture impeccable, my smile calm. The suspense had become a living, breathing entity, and I was at its mercy. "Alex," a voice whispered from the doorway. It was soft, teasing, almost intimate. My stomach twisted. Recognition, dread, and thrill collided in an overwhelming mix. My mind raced. Was it Lana? Another teacher? Someone else entirely? Each second stretched, the suspense unbearable, the tension suffocating. Ms. Carlyle remained silent, a sentinel observing the climax of all the weeks of training, guidance, and transformation. Her eyes flicked between me and the figure in the doorway, unreadable yet sharp, knowing. The suspense was complete. I could feel the duality within me, the vulnerability, the excitement, the fear of exposure, all tangled with the exhilaration of control, mastery, and identity. Every heartbeat, every nerve ending, every sense was on edge. The persona, fully formed and vibrant, demanded to be acknowledged, yet the lingering fear whispered that a single misstep could shatter everything. And then, the figure stepped forward, just enough to remain partially hidden, heightening the suspense, leaving the identity and intention unresolved. My pulse thundered in my ears, adrenaline coursing like fire through my veins. Every muscle tensed, ready for action, yet frozen in anticipation. The room was silent, heavy with possibility. The reflection in the mirror, the persona I had nurtured, the shadow at the door, the flicker of emotion in Lana's eyes earlier that day, all combined into a moment suspended in time. And then, just as I was about to speak, the scene froze. The story ended on a razor's edge, leaving everything unresolved. Who was in the doorway? Would Lana understand and accept? Or would the secret shatter everything? Would my carefully cultivated persona survive exposure, or crumble under scrutiny? The suspense was complete, unresolved, and tantalizing. Every heartbeat echoed like a countdown, every shadow a threat or a promise. And as I stood there, frozen, poised, and trembling in the heels of my transformation, I realized one undeniable truth. The story was far from over, and the next chapter would test everything I had learned, everything I had become, and everything I feared. The mirror reflected two versions of me, the Alex of the past, hesitant and uncertain, and the persona I had crafted, bold and daring. Both stared back, frozen in suspense, waiting for the next step, the next revelation, the next challenge. And the story would continue.